Hello. If you haven't heard it yet, we're live from New York for Security Live in the Big Apple. My name's Sarah Curry. I am with AWS Global Services Security Team. Our team focuses on a bunch of different things from training, support, and helping our customers to enable solutions and security, and also partnering with our amazing security partners. This show is focused on our security partners that are here at Partner Summit, which is a part of New York Summit. So we're super excited to dive in today with Aiceberg. But before we do that, I'm going to pass it to my co-host, Brian, here.
Hey everybody, Brian Mendenhall. I am the worldwide head of the Security and Identity Partner Specialist team, organization, group of awesome people. Every year I add one word to my title, and I just passed my 3-year mark, so I get to pick the next word. Really excited about that. Before we move any further, we have these gold doubloons, gold coins, if you will. We watched a lot of Pirates of the Caribbean with the kids recently. If you use an acronym, first of all, if you actually swear, we're going to kick you off. I'm just going to say that to start.
This is a family-friendly show.
There's kids watching. Let's keep it PG. But if you use an acronym and you don't actually say what the acronym is, I'm not going to pretend to bring one up right now and then pretend like I know what the actual word means. But you get the idea. And also buzzwords. This is one I like to throw in. Like if you say like synergy or some other, like that's a red herring. You know, like some of that business jargon, like that, it's going in the jar.
Apparently I say, I'm going to ping them a lot.
I got told I say sweet. That's not, but dude, bro, I got a bunch of other San Diego things that are going to pop out. And I think I'm okay with that. I feel like that flies. If you, Alex,
you're being authentically yourself.
I hope I have enough gold coins for that.
Yeah, we'll pass you down some more.
Slang or anything else, like that's fine. We actually encourage some of that. But let's move on. Alex.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for having me, Sarah and Brian. I'm Alex Schlager. I'm the founder of Aiceberg, and we enable customers to adopt AI in a safe, secure, compliant, and observable manner. Think of us as a detection and response for AI at runtime.
I love that. And for anyone watching live, we are taking questions. So if you have any questions for Alex, we will be monitoring the chat, and he can answer it live here today. So I got to start off and ask, where does the name come from? What's the origin of Aiceberg?
So the name is, it's almost a running joke because we get so many versions of the name, Aiceberg. My favorite is A1berg. We even had that one day. And it goes back to our founding days. We were founded as a research project on AI explainability originally. And the idea with the Aiceberg obviously was to, uncover what's hidden below the surface. And it stuck, and we kept going with it.
I love it. It's very creative, and I love the logo too.
What's hidden beneath the surface? Yeah. I like that. That is cool. That is clever. Very good. And so, simply put, I'm gonna very much overgeneralize this, but you protect AI workloads. Mm-hmm. So if you're out there and you're a developer, if you're somebody that is building AI workloads and you're like, all right, we're gonna start with a chat bot, or we're gonna do something that is like mission critical healthcare diagnosis or whatever it is, you got to secure that bad boy. And that's where you guys come in.
Yeah, you're spot on. That's where we come in. We obviously sit in AWS. We expose a single, simple API. You plug us into your path, and you're up and running in 5 minutes. So there's no code integration. There's no libraries or SDKs. The idea really was to help companies focus on the development, on testing, on assurance and creating value, and make it simple and straightforward to provide security, compliance, and safety for all the AI use cases and agentic workflows inclusive that you're going to build over the next month and years.
And something that we've been seeing a lot from customers is the AI governance frameworks. How does that work? Something that I think is really important is the explainability, or why is the agent doing something? What's the context there? How is Aiceberg addressing that?
So I would start with the simple notion of if you deploy advanced technology, you're not going to use the same technology to provide safety and security. I think that's pretty intuitive. In AI, where it becomes more difficult is we don't understand how these large language models or generative AI works, right? And it's becoming increasingly complex. while becoming increasingly powerful. So one thing you want to establish is a human-centric, human-comprehensive control of this environment. And therefore, for us, it's really important that we provide explainability to our customers. So we don't use, deep learning models, for example. We don't use transformers. Or in simple terms, never monitor a black box with another black box. And explainability simply means, the human user can still understand, comprehend, trace, and audit how an AI made a decision. So in our case, it is why have we blocked or not blocked certain traffic? Why have we alerted on certain issues? And that is kind of the last control layer, the last bastion, if you like, of human control and comprehension. And we are very adamant about that this should remain explainable to keep humans in control.
That's super interesting, right? Because I've seen, it was pretty early on with generative AI that we started to see healthcare diagnosis, right? And you put the symptoms in and it pops out and it says cancer. And the doctor goes, no, I went through the cancer diagnosis process, not cancer. Do it again, boom, cancer, boom, cancer. Boom, and they're like, what is going on? And they had to dive back through that explainability of the neural network that's created to say, actually it developed a new way to diagnose cancer. And then that was a whole new thing, right? It wasn't just that one patient that was helped. We uncovered that we were able to help thousands of patients because of this new model or this new method of diagnosing cancer. That AI explainability piece is not just about uncovering a threat or detection, something like that, but it also, the research piece of that it feels like is a new way for us to think about threats and a new way for us to think about how breaches happen and how attack paths happen and things like that. Are you guys seeing that?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. So, to be clear, we can't explain why the large language model produces certain output. Nobody can, right? Even the providers, Anthropic or OpenAI, can't do that. Our point is, if you safeguard, if you audit, if you make, the use case transparent, part of that transparency is to explain and be able to explain why you have treated certain AI interaction a particular way. To your comment, one thing I think we also have to differentiate, especially as we're moving so aggressively into agentic AI, is the difference between AI augmenting humans and human augmenting AI. And what I mean with that is AI augmenting human is a path towards full automation and replacement of humans. Humans augmenting AI are areas and use cases where you will never replace the human. So to your example in the medical field, right? You might have advanced AI doing medical diagnosis and doing a lot of heavy lifting, but it's the doctor in the end who will approve or disapprove, whether this is moving forward. Law is another example where, again, you might replace your paralegal with an agent, but in the end, it's the lawyer who has to approve the final contract.
And that's super interesting, right? Because a lot of us are looking at AI and agentic AI and wondering, is it coming for my job? Yeah. Is it coming for this person's job? So I'm curious, now we're getting kind of diving into this a little bit. What are the use cases in which you see AI replacing the human, and what are the use cases in which you see the human really continuing to take the lead and make that decision?
It's a bit like looking into a glass ball. Look at like this. If you have highly repetitive processes that consist of a human element and maybe an IT tool, these are the first ones to go, right? Because they're relatively simple to replace with an agentic workflow. So any humans involved in these processes will be affected first. I mentioned the paralegal as an example, right? Where it's a lot about editing, consolidation of information, research. So these are all tasks that agents can relatively reliably do already. And as we move forward in time, depending on how reliable these agents evolve, you'll see more impact, right? So many jobs that are involved in editing, some creative work. If you looked at the latest video generation models, they're insanely powerful already. So you can imagine what's going to happen there in the creative fields. So yeah, I think this is mostly going after blue collar. I forgot the name, unfortunately, but I read an article or interview about one of the famous AI researchers. His recommendation was, what your kid should study? It's plumbing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Brian and I were actually talking earlier that
Yep.
maybe doing electric work for data centers, because as AI is becoming more and more prevalent, the data centers are running more workloads. So I completely agree with that. I've also seen where there's an AI agent that does diagnostics for radiology, and that it was 99.9% accurate on diagnosing early stage breast cancer. So there's a lot of really great outcomes that are coming, but also how are people upskilling themselves so that they can readjust to the next phase of, I guess, what career progressions are. Are you seeing for, your team is data science originally. How are you seeing a difference between your team being data science versus how a lot of startups are more focused on AI automation?
Well, as a data science company, we kind of applied ourselves to the area of safety, security, and compliance because our roots are in AI explainability. So we always had in the team, a strong desire to develop technology that will make a usage of AI more safe and more reliable, right? And prevent, not us, but as a community, prevent the AI doomsday scenarios. So we look at it from a very data scientific point of view. So we're not a security company per se, we're a data science company. And that probably is one of our main differentiators, that we're really focused on the data science, on the explainability, on the transparency of the, about keeping humans in control, versus being a cybersecurity company natively and trying to adopt AI for the purpose of cybersecurity.
Absolutely. Well, and I think it's super interesting, too, just getting into that aspect of, like you said, not necessarily a security company and not just pain points that you're working backwards from, but very deep research that your team has done based on large data sets. And we don't see that super often. So I think it's a very interesting call out. Going back to the AI explainability, how do you see, or how does Aiceberg think of when AI agents fall out of compliance? Is there a certain type of next steps customers should take looking at responsible AI in their frameworks?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is of course, right? The whole field of compliance, regulatory requirements is still evolving. And we are really early days with agentic AI, right? So there's like always a lot of buzz in media and in industry about all the opportunities. The reality is we're at the very beginning with agentic AI or agentic workflows. So, customers we're working with, we can see that, the entry point is still relatively simple processes. But think of it this way. If you run a process that involves 3 humans with a couple of IT tools, you would have put in place certain governance requirements and certain governance methods to make sure that the outcome basically meets the requirements you have set forth at the beginning. That is, the same is true for agentic AI, right? What you're ultimately doing is you're transferring agency from a human being to a machine. So you want equally observe this agent as the agents, operate and perform tasks. You want to have visibility. And to my earlier point, in human AI augmented environments, you also want to make sure you understand where the human in the loop interface has to be. And this can even be, something you use in the early days of testing. So we have a lot of customers who use agentic AI, but with a human in the loop, right? So they have a pilot period where they look at their governance, they look at their workflows, but there's a human in the loop that basically says, yes, this looks correct, this looks reliable. They might even use that human in the loop feedback to further train agents, so to accumulate memory that agents can use downstream. So there's a long-winded answer to your question. I think observability, human control, human in the loop in the early days is extremely important in order to reap the benefits that agentic AI promises mid and long term.
And to be clear, the vision here still is that at some point, the agentic components are running fully autonomously, right? That at some point, the human beings are removed because we feel that the risk is mitigated when we have the correct security controls within that AI environment to lower our risk and to remove threats. And I mean, as you're talking, I'm thinking about it's not just the threat of bad actors leveraging a system that has like a lot of access and like permissions throughout your environment, but also the generative AI component itself making decisions that may not be accurate. I mean, I'm seeing things in the news all the time about like AI like going rogue, and I just wonder how much of that is a part of the world we live in now, the bad actors versus like the bad AI. Not to like FUD anything here, but just to say there's a massive need for those security controls, right?
Yes, for the simple answer is yes, for two reasons. To your point, right? You have two issues. You have the issue of adversaries, and you have the issues of basically technology failures. So if you ask yourself, well, why should a security organization be concerned about AI safety? The simple reason is you won't be able to tell the difference on the onset of the incident. So you have multiple LLMs involved in an agentic workflow, right? They have a certain accuracy of mid-90 and mid-90s. So at one point, as this cascades and propagates, you'll have model failure, potentially. You might have a model hallucinating, right? And that hallucination basically is propagated downstream. As you look at the incident, at the very first second, you don't know if this is systemic failure due to model accuracy, hallucination, or simply bad logic, or if an adversary was somewhere in the loop, poisoning data, injecting a prompt injection, and so on and so forth. So that's why it's interesting that we now have safety conversations with CISOs, where in the past they would say, well, safety is really not so much in scope for us. It is now with AI.
Do you see that there's a need maybe for more trust and safety type training when it comes to AI governance?
I think similar as what we have seen in the emerging days of cybersecurity awareness, I think you'll see something very similar with AI, starting with creating awareness with your employees, how it works, what you should use it for, what you shouldn't use it for, up to services that the company, for example, sanctions that can be used or cannot be used. And then as we move forward, you're going to see an interesting shift in who are the parties, the stakeholders in an enterprise creating and owning these agentic workflows. Because the other big shift we're seeing is natural language is the new code. You don't need to be a coder or need to know how to code to set up an agentic workflow, right? User instructions, system instructions, agent profiles, these are all natural language artifacts. So you'll see an interesting dynamic where now business departments will increasingly own, create, and observe their agentic workflows when this was mostly an IT function in the past.
That's super interesting. And so I guess like moving forward, what is human and machine alignment? Like I know this is a concept that you guys are really big on, and how does that apply to what you guys do?
That's an area we are currently deep in research, and I think it will be one of the most challenging issues to solve in agentic AI or autonomous AI in general. And human-machine alignment simply means, is the agentic workflow, is the autonomous AI actually doing what the user's intention and objective was? Right? To give you an unrealistic example, but I'm using it because it makes it very easy to understand. I initiate an agent to book a flight for me in 2 days to Miami, and the observability flow shows the agent is calling GitHub. That obviously doesn't fit together and would be a break of the alignment between the agentic actions and the user intention and objective.
Interesting. So how do you determine intent in those prompts?
Good old-fashioned machine learning. We built many models. One of them is an intent classifier. It's actually our largest model with 250 classes that, based on semantic information, classifies the user intention, right? There's a couple of other things in the mix here, understanding where the user intention will be found within the prompt or a longer prompt. But intention is probably one of the most powerful signals that we will use or are using in agentic AI, because it creates that human anchor that we can then basically verify what the agents are doing against.
Very interesting. And with your data science background and all the different research that you're doing, where do you see in the next couple of years threat detection and incident response going when it comes to these agentic AI workloads?
I mean, we're not dissimilar with how detection response in, let's call it, the legacy cybersecurity posture and methodologies. So what we have done, for example, we have segmented agentic workflows into 8 major event types, right? From a security perspective, what it comes down to is what are the security and safety critical events you should have observability of, and you should basically apply guardrails against. And these are things like agent initiation, user to agent, agent to agent, agent to model context protocol, or what we call tool invocation. So there's two major things we do, or what a detection and response should be doing. It looks at every event, performs the respective classification from a safety and security perspective, and then it looks across multiple events to perform what we just discussed, the alignment classification. So that's what we believe the future of detection and response will look like in autonomous AI environments, which is visibility and awareness of events, understanding of what event poses which risk, right? Look at the OWASP top 10 for LLM, for example. And then the last step, looking at multiple events and making sure that they align with the original user intention objective.
Interesting. And then, so I see the correlation, the baselining with machine learning of like, I said this thing and I should be getting this thing in return. And instead I got this thing. So what in those threat detection, those detections and those alerts, what are some actions that would be taken then as a result of those alerts and detections?
Mm-hmm. So the response part of detection and response is very simple to start with. Block, right? It looks like a jailbreak attempt. Simply block it. You can block it, forward it to your SIEM, to your SOAR, but there's standard firewall or detection behavior. There's other responses for specific information types where we can actually live redact the content. Let's say private information, health information, payment information, passwords, secrets, crypto keys, you name it, can be redacted. And then the third option is you trigger a secondary inspection. For example, we can detect whether source code is present in a prompt or response. We can classify the language. And you could trigger a secondary inspection to search basically for known vulnerabilities in that code. So it's block, redact, or secondary inspection, depending on the signal, depending on the scenario.
It's really interesting.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to say, earlier today we talked to our general manager of security incident response service, and he mentioned that governance he thought was one of the key gaps that he saw. For AI governance, how do you see, well, I kind of already asked emerging trends, but how do you see that evolving? And also with customers, essentially a lot of them are starting to build their AI governance programs. What would you say is top priority of where to start to build their AI governance program?
Data. I think the biggest challenge we see is with data, with understanding what data you have, where it is, and how it classifies, right? Is it financial data, HR data? Is it structured, unstructured? Does it sit in a database? Because, data is the fuel of AI. So if you don't understand what data you have, of what kind it is, how sensitive it is, or in short, if you don't have full control of your data, that's going to be your biggest inhibitor to an effective, adoption of AI. But it's also going to be a big challenge for your governance, right? Because as you approach the governance for AI, understanding of where the data is, who created it, where does it come from, meaning lineage, who has access to it, will be probably the highest priority you should be looking at.
That's a great point. And knowing where to start. Yeah. Absolutely. And if we have any data scientists that are watching right now, obviously creating a startup is not easy. Alex, do you have any pro tips for if there's data scientists out there that are wanting to create their own startup?
There's probably so many, we can do a separate episode on that. But
sure.
If I have to pick one, it's probably what you have read many times, right? Validate against how you create value for your customers. And the second one is probably the hardest. Try to look in the future in sense of where you think technology is moving. And I admit that's a very hard one. But what I'm trying to say with that is we saw a lot of companies that kind of grew very fast and then they became obsolete because prompt engineering, for example, is not a thing anymore, right? It's not required necessarily anymore. It became obsolete relatively fast. So understanding how you add value to your customers and understanding how you keep your product, your service relevant over time and prevent lock-in to any particular technologies, models, frameworks, right? So if you look at the large language model, generative AI security space, one of the biggest traps there is that you lock yourself in too much for a specific piece of technology, whether that's a particular model or framework or methodology, because it's going to be obsolete in 2 to 3 months.
Absolutely. So it sounds like value proposition and having that adaptability based on what's going on in the market.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Alex, for joining and
you for having me.
representing Aiceberg. Super interesting. I love the concept, so I'm excited to dive into it more.